December 15, 1944, Philippine Sea. Radar screens lit up with impossible readings. 6 Japanese bombers heading straight for the naval fleet. Standard protocol demanded multiple fighters, complex coordination, inevitable losses. But that night, everything changed. 1 aircraft, 1 pilot, 2 hours, 6 confirmed kills. When dawn broke, Japanese high command received reports they refused to believe. America's night ghost had arrived, and aerial warfare would never be the same again. November 1944. Naval Air Station Tacloban, Leyte Island, Philippines. 3:47 hours. Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell studied reports that told a devastating story in cold numbers. Over 8 weeks, Japanese night bombers had sunk 14 American vessels, killed 892 sailors, damaged critical infrastructure supporting MacArthur's campaign. The pattern was brutally consistent. Bombers struck between 0200 and 0500 hours, exploited darkness as absolute protection, vanished before dawn fighters could intercept. Mitchell was 32, born outside Indianapolis, son of an automotive engineer. He'd graduated from Purdue with degrees in aeronautical engineering before joining the Navy in 1940. Pearl Harbor transformed preparation into desperate necessity. By 1943, he tested experimental aircraft at Patuxent River, Maryland, working with equipment most pilots considered science fiction. Airborne radar, promising to turn darkness into advantage. The SCR-720 radar system weighed 415 pounds, required dedicated operator, consumed enormous power, produced grainy images demanding interpretation skills few possessed. Early tests were discouraging. Equipment failed constantly. Vacuum tubes burned out from vibration. Official assessment suggested radar night fighters might be viable by late 1945. Too late for current campaigns. But Mitchell refused that timeline. He'd witnessed aftermath of night attacks, burned sailors pulled from oil-slicked water, vessels gutted by bombs, crews never saw coming. Accepting death as inevitable wasn't American, not when engineering offered alternatives. The Northrop P-61 Black Widow flew in face of conventional wisdom. Massive for a fighter, 45 feet long, 28,000 pounds loaded, twin Pratt & Whitney engines producing 4,000 combined horsepower. It carried 4 20mm cannons, 4 50-caliber machine guns, enough firepower to shred any bomber. Most importantly, SCR-720 radar in its nose gave crews ability to hunt targets in absolute darkness. Mitchell's proposal was straightforward. Deploy 6 P-61s to Tacloban, train crews in night intercept, prove the concept worked. Response from leadership was skeptical. Admiral Richardson questioned whether pilots could master technology Army Air Forces struggled with. Captain Morrison doubted radar could reliably detect aircraft at combat ranges. 3 days after Mitchell submitted his proposal, Japanese bombers struck San Pedro Bay. USS Stockwell took 3 direct hits, sank in 11 minutes with 186 men aboard. Attack happened at 0322 hours. Pitch darkness, no moon, heavy clouds. Conventional fighters found nothing. Mitchell stood before Admiral Richardson 48 hours later. "Sir, we're losing this war one night at a time. Every conventional response failed because we're fighting blind. Radar changes that. Give me 60 days, 6 aircraft, 18 crew. If we can't prove it works, I'll recommend scrapping the program." Richardson studied casualty reports, calculating costs in American lives versus experimental risk. "You have 30 days, Commander. Prove this works, or we return to standard doctrine." Next morning, 6 P-61 Black Widows arrived at Tacloban. His hand-picked crews represented America's best. Pilots from Pensacola and Corpus Christi, radar operators trained at MIT and Caltech, maintenance crews from Los Angeles and St. Louis factories. Average age, 24. They gathered while tropical rain hammered corrugated roofs. "Gentlemen, we're here to solve a problem killing Americans every night. Japanese think darkness protects them. We're proving they're wrong. Technology in these aircraft represents thousands of hours from American engineers, workers, scientists back home who believe we can win through innovation as much as courage. We're going to own the night. First week was brutal. Radar systems failed during tests, tubes shattering from humidity. Maintenance crews worked 16-hour shifts, troubleshooting electrical systems in tropical heat. Pilots struggled with handling characteristics. Radar operators faced steep learning curves, interpreting scope returns. By day 15, readiness remained questionable. Then intelligence reported increased Japanese activity. Radio intercepts suggested major operation planned for December 14-15, targeting naval forces supporting Mindoro invasion. Mitchell called his crews together. We're going operational tomorrow night. Equipment isn't perfect, training isn't complete, but Americans are dying because we're not up there. That ends now. December 15th, 0200 hours. 6 P-61s sat on flight line, engines warming, radar activated, crews performing final checks. Mitchell occupied lead aircraft, radar operator Lieutenant Robert Chen from San Francisco studying scope displays. Radio crackled at 0243 hours. Nighthawk lead, this is Overwatch. Multiple bogies bearing 090, range 70 miles, altitude 18,000, speed 160 knots. Count indicates 6 aircraft. You are cleared to intercept. Weapons free. Mitchell felt pulse steady. Clarity when preparation met execution. Nighthawk flight lead. Execute intercept plan Bravo. 5 voices confirmed. 3 miles above Philippine Sea, America's night ghost was hunting. Japanese were about to discover darkness no longer protected them. The P-61 climbed through tropical night where visibility meant nothing. Instruments everything. Mitchell flew by feel and gauges. Altimeter reading 22,000 feet, airspeed 240 knots, engines smooth despite humidity plaguing ground operations. His tactical awareness depended entirely on Lieutenant Chen and the glowing radar scope. Contact bearing 087, range 42 miles, altitude 19,000, Chen reported, voice professionally calm despite this being his first combat intercept. The MIT graduate's academic skills now translated to life-and-death decisions at 4 miles altitude. 6 Japanese bombers flew in formation, likely Mitsubishi G4M Betty medium bombers based on speed and altitude. Each carried 1,800 pounds of bombs intended for American ships. Bombers presumed darkness guaranteed invisibility. Japanese doctrine held American fighters couldn't engage without visual contact. That doctrine was 15 minutes from catastrophic revision. Mitchell keyed radio. Nighthawk 2, offset north 2 miles. Nighthawk 3, offset south. We'll take them from multiple angles. Confirm when positioned. Formation split, 3 P-61s maneuvering to surround bombers from different vectors. This was American innovation, using radar to coordinate attacks, conventional doctrine considered impossible. No other air force possessed this capability. German night fighters used radar, but lacked American range and reliability. British operated primarily over Europe. Only America's industrial might produced aircraft and electronics sophisticated enough for offensive night operations over vast Pacific distances. Inside Mitchell's P-61, temperature exceeded 100 degrees despite altitude. Canopy fogged constantly from humidity. Radio static crackled from distant thunderstorms. Radar scope flickered as vacuum tubes heated unevenly. Mitchell's flight suit was soaked, oxygen mask uncomfortable, body tense from 37 minutes flying on instruments without seeing anything beyond his cockpit. This was reality never mentioned in training manuals. Combat wasn't clean or comfortable. It was exhausting, disorienting work, demanding perfect performance despite terrible conditions. Japanese bombers flew in relative comfort. Confident darkness protected them. Americans worked 4 times harder for every advantage. Range 30 miles, Chen reported. Formation holding steady. They have no idea we're here. Mitchell felt grim satisfaction. American philosophy, build it massive, tough, fill it with technology, crew it with smart, determined people, was proving superior to Japanese doctrine, presuming tactical surprise substituted for technical capability. Nighthawk 2 positioned north, radar contact confirmed. Nighthawk 3 positioned south, tracking targets. 3 P-61s now bracketed the formation from north, south, and astern. Japanese flew straight and level, navigation lights extinguished, confident no enemy could find them. That confidence was about to cost everything. Range 22 miles, Chen announced, designating individual targets. Lead bomber is Target Alpha, second is Bravo, third is Charlie. Mitchell armed weapons, 4 20mm cannons, 4 50 caliber machine guns, enough firepower to shred any bomber in seconds. Armament was deliberately overwhelming, compensating for engagement windows measured in seconds. No second chances if first pass failed. Nighthawk flight, weapons armed. Initiate attack on my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute. 3 American night fighters accelerated towards 6 Japanese bombers that didn't know death approached at 300 miles per hour. Mitchell closed to 8 miles, then 6, then 4. Chen called continuous updates. Target Alpha bearing 089, range 3 miles, altitude 19,000. At 2 miles, Mitchell saw them, not bombers themselves, but engine exhaust glowing faintly against black sky. Japanese crews had no idea American radar detected them at these ranges, couldn't imagine technology permitted this precision. Their doctrine presumed invisibility. American engineering made invisibility irrelevant. Mitchell closed to 200 feet, point-blank range. Crosshairs centered on lead bomber's fuselage. Target Alpha identified. Engaging now. He pressed trigger. 4 20mm cannons erupted, tracers arcing through darkness, explosive rounds striking Betty's wing root and fuselage. Effect was catastrophic. Japanese bombers carried enormous fuel loads in unprotected tanks. Design traded safety for range. Mitchell's fire ignited fuel instantly. Target Alpha exploded in fireball visible 30 miles, debris tumbling toward ocean 4 miles below. Remaining 5 bombers broke formation immediately, desperate evasive maneuvers, but they were slow, heavily loaded, designed for bombing, not combat. P-61s were purpose-built hunters in natural element. Nighthawk 2 engaged Bravo from north. Cannon fire, shredding tail assembly. Aircraft entered uncontrolled spin, crew attempting bailout as bomber spiraled downward trailing flame. Nighthawk 3 engaged Charlie from south. Japanese pilot attempted violent turn, but P-61 matched every maneuver, radar providing continuous tracking. Cannon fire raked bomber nose to tail. Bomb load detonated, explosion turning night into brief daylight. No parachutes emerged. Mitchell pursued target Delta, diving toward lower altitude. P-61 followed effortlessly. American engines providing power overloaded Japanese bomber couldn't match. At 12,000 feet, Mitchell closed again, firing controlled bursts. Delta's right engine erupted in flames, bomber rolling inverted before crashing into Philippine Sea. Time from first engagement to fourth kill, 11 minutes. 2 bombers remained, separated by miles, both attempting desperate escape. Nighthawk 2, take Echo. Nighthawk 3, take Foxtrot. I'm Winchester, returning to base. His ammunition was exhausted. 4 kills in 11 minutes, consuming entire combat load. Nighthawk 2 pursued Echo for 8 minutes before achieving position. Cannon fire crippled control surfaces. Aircraft crashed into Philippine jungle, fireball marking grave. Nighthawk 3 intercepted Foxtrot at 8,000 feet, shredding bomber with sustained fire. Betty broke apart, pieces scattering across 10 miles of ocean. Total time from first contact to 6th kill, 1 hour, 43 minutes. 6 Japanese bombers, months of construction, trained crews, operational planning, erased by American technology and determination. Not 1 American aircraft damaged. Not 1 crew member injured. 0 losses. Mitchell landed at Tacloban 0447 hours, physically exhausted but mentally exhilarated. Ground crew who'd worked impossible hours making radar function were waiting on flight line. As Mitchell climbed from cockpit, they erupted in celebration. They'd proven something fundamental. American innovation changed warfare's rules. December 15th, 1944, Eju 8:30 hours. Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service Headquarters, Manila. Commander Takeshi Yamamoto studied overnight reports with growing incomprehension bordering on horror. Sixth Air Fleet launched 2 bomber raids against American naval forces, 14 aircraft total, significant commitment of increasingly scarce resources. Standard doctrine predicted losses of perhaps 2 aircraft from anti-aircraft fire. Acceptable attrition for mission that should have inflicted substantial damage. Actual results defied every assumption Japanese air doctrine was built on. 14 bombers dispatched, 0 reached targets, 0 dropped bombs, 14 aircraft lost with all crews. After-action reports from few radio transmissions before aircraft vanished were fragmentary, contradictory, under attack, cannot see enemy aircraft, explosions from darkness. Then silence, permanent silence. Yamamoto commanded bomber squadrons since 1938, flew combat over China, helped develop night attack doctrines presuming darkness guaranteed tactical superiority. Operational mathematics were simple. American fighters required visual contact. Darkness eliminated visual contact. Therefore, darkness eliminated fighter threat. Japanese bombers could operate with near impunity after sunset. But overnight, that doctrine collapsed. Something changed fundamentally. Yamamoto reviewed intelligence summaries searching for explanation. American fighter activity was not reported. No visual sightings, no radar warnings. Japanese early warning detected nothing unusual. Yet bomber formations vanished, as if consumed by invisible force. The phrase "one pilot used before transmission ended" stuck in Yamamoto's mind. Night ghost. He called emergency staff meeting. 12 officers representing intelligence, operations, tactical planning filled conference room. Maps of Leyte Gulf and Philippine Sea covered walls, marked with operational areas and attack routes. Yamamoto addressed them bluntly. "We lost 14 aircraft last night to enemy we never saw. Our pilots were experienced, aircraft properly maintained, tactics sound, yet we achieved 0 mission success. Explain this." Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Sato offered tentative analysis. Reports suggest American night fighters, possibly equipped with detection equipment. We know from technical intelligence Americans have been developing airborne radar systems. Perhaps they've achieved operational capability. The Operations Officer Commander Fujimoto responded with institutional skepticism. American radar technology is primitive. Their fighters are day-only platforms. Our doctrine has accounted for this. Night operations remain our tactical advantage. His tone suggested dismissing inconvenient reality rather than accepting doctrinal failure. This was a fundamental problem Japanese military hierarchy faced throughout Pacific War. Organizational culture that punished admitting error, rewarded conformity with established doctrine, treated contradictory evidence as enemy propaganda or temporary anomaly. American forces adapted constantly, incorporated lessons from every engagement, modified tactics based on operational results. Japanese doctrine remained rigid, treating deviation from established methods as near heresy. Yamamoto recognized this dynamic, but understood fighting it directly would accomplish nothing. Instead, he focused on observable evidence. 14 aircraft lost represents our worst single-night casualties of entire campaign. We cannot sustain this attrition. Regardless of explanation, we must develop countermeasures immediately. But developing countermeasures required understanding the threat, and understanding required accepting American technology had surpassed Japanese predictions. Cultural and institutional barriers to that acceptance were enormous. Japanese military planning consistently underestimated American industrial capacity, technological innovation, operational adaptability. Presuming American inferiority was comfortable delusion, reality was now shattering. Across Pacific, American intelligence exploited this confusion systematically. Radio intercepts of Japanese communications revealed growing disorder in enemy air operations. Bomber squadrons grounded pending operational review. Surviving pilots reported demoralization. Nobody wanted missions where death came invisibly from darkness they'd relied on for protection. At Tacloban, Mitchell's P-61 squadron flew nightly missions throughout December and January. Tactical pattern was consistent. Radar detected Japanese formations at ranges exceeding 30 miles. P-61s positioned for optimal intercept. Attacks executed before Japanese crews knew American fighters were present. Kill ratio was devastating. 42 Japanese aircraft destroyed in 53 nights, 0 American losses to enemy action. Operational impact extended beyond attrition statistics. Japanese night bombing of American naval forces virtually ceased after January 15, 1945. Threat that killed nearly 1,000 American sailors in late 1944 was effectively neutralized. Supply convoys operated with reduced concern. Invasion operations proceeded on schedule without constant harassment. Tactical advantage Americans gained from radar-equipped night fighters was transformative. Japanese tactical responses revealed desperation rather than adaptation. Some formations attempted extremely low-altitude approaches, hoping to avoid radar detection flying at wave-top height. But American destroyer-mounted radar detected these attempts, vectoring P-61s to intercept. Other formations attempted high-altitude approaches exceeding 25,000 feet, but P-61s regularly operated above 30,000 feet. American engines and supercharger technology outperformed Japanese equivalents. Most telling indicator of Japanese confusion came from intercepted radio communication in late January. Bomber pilot radioed his base, "Cannot see enemy aircraft, no visual contact, but they see us." How do they see us? How do we fight enemies we cannot see? Transmission ended abruptly, presumably when American cannon fire found its target. That question captured fundamental technological and tactical gap Pacific War exposed. Japanese military doctrine remained rooted in 1930s understanding, visual acquisition, individual pilot skill, tactical formations for daylight operations. American doctrine evolved beyond those limitations through systematic application of technology, engineering, industrial resources. Radar didn't just provide tactical advantage, it represented entirely different conception of how modern warfare functioned. By February 1945, Japanese night bombing operations in Philippines had effectively ceased. Night Ghost achieved complete air superiority after sunset. American fleet operated without fear of nocturnal attack. Ground forces received supplies without harassment. March 1945. War continued its progression across Pacific, but night sky over those contested waters belonged undisputedly to Americans. Mitchell's P-61 squadron expanded to 12 aircraft operating from bases throughout Philippines and eventually Okinawa. Operational statistics told story of complete tactical dominance. 187 Japanese aircraft destroyed in night engagements, American loss rate below 2%, 0 successful enemy night bombing attacks against fleet assets within P-61 patrol range. But numbers failed to capture Transformation Night Ghost program represented. Before radar-equipped night fighters, darkness was vulnerability Americans couldn't adequately defend against. After it became operational advantage, Americans exploited systematically. Technological leap wasn't incremental improvement. It was fundamental paradigm shift changing warfare's rules. Strategic impact rippled through every aspect of Pacific operations. Naval commanders planned amphibious assaults, knowing fleets wouldn't face nocturnal bombing. Supply chains operated efficiently without constant harassment. Ground forces received continuous air support regardless of time. Tactical freedom this provided was immeasurable. Operations that previously required extensive defensive preparation now proceeded with confidence born from air superiority, extending 24 hours daily. Program's success validated fundamental American approach to warfare. Identify problems, apply engineering solutions, leverage industrial capacity, train personnel to maximum proficiency, then execute with systematic determination. This methodology contrasted sharply with Japanese approach, emphasizing warrior spirit, tactical aggression, acceptance of casualties as inevitable cost. Technological gap between American radar-directed night fighters and Japanese conventional bombers symbolized larger strategic divergence, ultimately determining war's outcome. Mitchell received Navy Cross for developing and proving night intercept tactics. But he deflected personal recognition, emphasizing contributions from radar operators like Lieutenant Chen, maintenance crews keeping finicky electronics functioning in hostile tropical environment, engineers at Northrop and MIT designing systems working under impossible conditions, and industrial workers from California to Massachusetts building aircraft and electronics, giving America technological edge. This reflected broader truth about American war effort. Victory resulted from collective national mobilization rather than individual heroism. Millions of workers in factories, scientists in laboratories, farmers producing food, families enduring separation, they all contributed to capacity that overwhelmed Axis powers through sheer productive output and technological innovation. P-61 Black Widow represented just one example of systematic American advantages proving decisive. Program's most profound legacy emerged after war's end, when classified operational reports were declassified and military historians began comprehensive analysis of Pacific Air Campaign. Night Fighter program demonstrated concepts shaping Cold War aviation development, importance of electronic warfare, value of dedicated interceptors, effectiveness of radar-guided weapons, necessity of continuous technological innovation to maintain military advantage. P-61 itself had relatively short operational lifespan, replaced by jet-powered aircraft within 5 years. But operational doctrine Mitchell and Cruz proved became permanent foundation of American air power. Every subsequent fighter carried radar. Every pilot trained in beyond visual range engagement tactics. Every tactical doctrine assumed electronic systems were fundamental to combat effectiveness rather than experimental additions. Human stories behind technological achievements were equally important. Lieutenant Chen returned to San Francisco after war, completed Ph.D. in electrical engineering at Stanford, spent career developing radar systems for civilian aviation, making commercial air travel safer. His wartime experience interpreting scope returns informed design philosophy prioritizing operator interface and system reliability. Thousands of travelers who never knew his name benefited from his contributions. Mitchell remained in Navy, eventually commanding carrier air groups and serving in senior staff positions, shaping post-war naval aviation doctrine. He consistently emphasized importance of investing in technology and personnel training, arguing America's military advantage depended on maintaining technological edge through continuous innovation. His advocacy helped secure funding for programs keeping American military capabilities ahead of potential adversaries throughout Cold War. Maintenance crews, who kept P-61s operational under impossible conditions, returned to civilian jobs in aerospace industry, bringing combat-tested experience, improving aircraft reliability and maintainability. Factory workers who built Black Widows transitioned to producing commercial aircraft, establishing America's aviation industry as global leader. Knowledge, skills, and institutional capabilities developed during wartime didn't disappear with peace. They transformed into enduring national advantages. Decades later, when military historians interviewed surviving participants, common themes emerged. They spoke about determination to solve problems killing fellow Americans, about refusing to accept conventional wisdom when better solutions existed, about working endless hours because mission mattered more than personal comfort, about pragmatic optimism, characterizing American approach to seemingly impossible challenges, about proving American innovation and industrial might could overcome any tactical disadvantage. One anecdote captured this spirit perfectly. During 1975 reunion, former maintenance chief was asked how they kept radar systems functioning when technical manuals said equipment couldn't operate in tropical humidity. He laughed. Manual was written by engineers who never left California. We were in Philippines fixing what was broken with whatever parts we could scrounge. American way isn't waiting for perfect solutions. It's making imperfect solutions work well enough to win. Japanese night bomber threat that seemed insurmountable in late 1944 was completely neutralized by early 1945 through combination of technology, training, determination. Night Ghost that Japanese pilots feared and commanders couldn't counter was ultimately American ingenuity applied systematically to tactical problem. Lesson transcended specific historical context. American military effectiveness derives from ability to identify challenges, develop innovative solutions, execute with resources that free society's industrial and scientific capabilities uniquely provide. When war ended, August 1945, Mitchell stood on USS Missouri deck watching Japanese surrender ceremony. He thought about 14 months earlier, when night sky belonged to enemy bombers and Americans died unable to fight back. He thought about crews who trusted experimental technology, maintenance personnel who worked miracles with temperamental electronics, industrial workers who built aircraft changing warfare's fundamental rules. Victory being formalized wasn't just military triumph, it was validation of American system channeling free society's energy and innovation into decisive strategic advantages. Night Ghost proved something essential about American character. When confronted with impossible challenges, Americans don't accept defeat. They innovate, adapt, ultimately prevail through combination of technological capability and human determination. That legacy extended far beyond 1945. Shaping American military doctrine, technological development, national self-conception for generations. If this story of American innovation and determination inspired you, hit that subscribe button and join our community uncovering untold World War II stories. Drop a comment telling us which aspect impacted you most, the technological breakthrough, tactical execution, or crew dedication. What other hidden Pacific War stories should we explore? Subscribe now, enable notifications, and never miss another deep dive into moments that defined America's finest hour.